Hello and welcome. My name is Martin Savage from London in the UK. I'm a semi-retired paediatric endocrinologist, an emeritus professor in the Queen Mary University of London. And I've been in pediatric endocrinology for 40 years. I've loved it. It's been an enormously stimulating field to work in, and notably to have many close friends and colleagues in this field has been extraordinarily rewarding. And it's my great pleasure to welcome you to our video interview of a legend. The title of the session is Leadership in Pediatric Endocrinology, Lessons and Guidance. And today I'm delighted to say that I will be interviewing Professor Wieland Kiess from Leipzig in Germany. So before we start the interview, let me tell you a little bit about Professor Kiess. His current position is Professor Emeritus in Pediatrics and former Director of Pediatrics at the University of Leipzig Medical Center. In 1977, he started his medical training in Tübingen and Munich, completing his thesis in 1984. And then in 1985, at the rather young age of 27, became a fellow and visiting scientist at the National Cancer Institute section of Metabolism and Endocrinology at the National Institutes of Health in Bethesda, Maryland. There, he became rapidly involved in basic endocrine research, studying the IGF system and notably the type 2 IGF receptor, which he published in the Journal of Biological Chemistry in 1987. And he stayed at the NIH until 1992, when, still only 34, he returned to Germany with a position of senior pediatrician and lecturer in Munich. He then moved to senior lecturer position in Gießen, and then in 1998 moved to Leipzig as head of the Department of Women's and Pediatric Medicine. He was head of the Children's Hospital in Leipzig. And it was in Leipzig that he really built up pediatrics and notably pediatric endocrinology to the outstanding center of excellence which it is today. He was also Dean of the Faculty of Medicine from 2009 to 2012. In addition, he had two parallel accomplishments. First, he was editor-in-chief of the Journal of Paediatric Endocrinology and Metabolism for many years, and he was also treasurer of the European Society for Paediatric Endocrinology when I happened to be the secretary, and this is how we got to know each other well and became close friends. So, as you see, Wieland has had an extremely successful and varied career, and I'm sure he is an ideal person to talk to us about leadership. So, Wieland, welcome, and thank you very much for agreeing to sit in the interviewee's chair. The title is Leadership in Pediatric Endocrinology, Lessons and Guidance. And let me start by asking you some questions about your life and career. Let's go right back to maybe your childhood. When did you make the decision to study medicine?
Thank you for asking this question, which is really typical of maybe my luck, my career, and I'm very humble and full of gratitude that things worked out well. It was at the age of 17 that I had decided, really a decision, to study medicine. But beyond that, which today I consider crazy, I said I'm going to be a pediatrician and I'm going to be the head of a university department in pediatrics. Imagine at the age of 17, I had no idea what that meant.
So where did that ambition come from? Did you inherit it from your parents, for example?
I think the family has no medical background, but there are people, mechanical engineers, physicists, university people. So studying knowledge, science was something that was around. Um, but importantly and interestingly, the south of Germany, where I grew up, has been exposed by a rather Protestant way of leading one's life. So people were ambitious. So I had learned to try hard. That was something that we learned as children.
Very good. That's extremely interesting. So basically, you were in training in Tübingen and Munich, and
Mhm.
then you wrote your medical thesis. And quite soon after that, you made the decision to go to the United States. Now, I would just say that for example, in training in the UK, this would be almost impossible at that stage because we have to do 2 years of so-called core training in general pediatrics before we can even think about doing any research. But clearly, it was not the case for you, and you took advantage of this opportunity. Tell us how that actually came about.
I think there are two aspects to it. One is that I was always genuinely interested in going abroad, in learning, in getting, knowing new environments, new people, different people, which probably today is not mainstream anymore. But at that time, it helped that sort of there was an openness, at least in the society of West Germany. But secondly, it's poor luck and due to other people. Because when I was a very junior doctor, as you said, in Munich, one of the professors put a slip of paper and a letter in my letterbox. And this was the announcement of the possibility to apply for stipends in the United States, for example, but then moving back to your original institution. So the idea was in the foundation that paid for this, that you got training abroad, but then would sort of give back your knowledge to your home institution. So it was my own interest, but also the help of people who pushed me into the right direction.
And you think it's important to travel because I think this is a message, a very, very important message, not only in one's personal development, but in the development of a field such as pediatric endocrinology, that a young pediatrician at some point needs to go abroad, work in a different culture, in a different, ideally, a center of excellence, and bring back what he or she has learned. And actually, some countries have not been able to achieve this, and they're really falling behind. I mean, there are several countries in Europe which are examples of this, where it's very difficult because often the young pediatricians are married women and they don't want to leave their families, etc., etc. But I think the fact that you've shown the benefits of traveling abroad and learning abroad in a different culture are very important. And of course, you perfected your English in uh, um, in the United States, which is another essential
So
quality in terms of leadership. So that's very interesting. And then you came back, and but let me say, I imagine you hadn't done much clinical pediatrics at the time you went to the USA. And what about how much clinical pediatrics was there at the NIH? Was that a problem?
Basically, I did basic research at the NIH and nothing else, day and night, 7 days a week. On the other hand, when I went back to Munich, this is a nice story that I keep telling for the last 40 years. Other junior doctors told me, well, you now have to go to the intensive care unit and you do at least as many shifts as we do,
Yeah.
which meant that usually per month I had 2 or 3 shifts more than anyone else in the department, which helped. I
Yes.
didn't complain. Later, I felt it unfair, but I think it helped a lot because
Yes.
I spent a lot of time both in the NICU, in the neonatal intensive care unit, as well as in the pediatric intensive care unit. Got exposed to almost everything in pediatrics, which really shaped me as much as did basic research.
That's very interesting. That's very, very, very important because I think to be a specialist pediatrician, you need to have confidence as a general pediatrician as
Yes.
well. I think that's very important. So, one of the things I've always admired about you is your decision making ability and the fact that you made the decision to settle in Leipzig. This was such a, I mean, tell us how you felt that this was the right decision at the time and that how this has actually benefited your future career.
I'm quoting a mutual a friend of ours, Martin, who I had an opportunity to go to Switzerland, to a department there, and to Leipzig, and there were other openings. And when I talked to this friend who is American, he said one single sentence: go to Leipzig because you can make a difference. And that doesn't have to do with East or West. It has to do, what do you want? The Children's Hospital in Leipzig was as part of my family, as part of my life, as our family was. So it was part of what I wanted to do with my life. And if you are strongly behind a profession, a project, something you want to do, then you'll succeed. So I think Leipzig was very attractive because there was so much change that sort of also characterizes my life. I really like changes. I like different exposures, variety. So it was very clear that we had to move things, that we have had to change things, and that we had an opportunity to go ahead.
Very good. So tell me a little bit about how you rate research in terms of the career of a pediatric endocrinologist. How important is it in terms of leadership to have spent time doing serious research?
It is of utmost importance, and it's with quite a little bit of sadness that I have to admit that I see that science is losing its ground a little bit at the present time. I think we really have to fight, and I mean it by saying fight for evidence-based medicine rather than eminence-based medicine. We have to constantly ask ourselves, is this the correct decision? What is the hypothesis? I mean, every patient's situation is a research project. What is the hypothesis? What is the question? Nowadays, I've been struggling with a lot of clinicians saying we need an MRI. Okay, of which body part and for what reason? Will it help the patient? We need an X-ray. Well, do you want to irradiate the patient or do you want to have a clear increase in knowledge about the situation of the patient? So research and clinical practice are, in my eyes, identical.
Yeah, that's very good. because there's so much technology now in medicine. For example, AI is coming into diagnosis and therapy.
Mhm.
Do you think that clinical skills remain important?
Of course, the first exposure of a patient is, apart from the internet, the mother has in pediatrics searched the internet and thinks that her child has blah, blah, blah. But the first, well, exposure will be the eyes, and the nose, the ears, and the hands of a physician, be it a female or a male or a diverse doctor. So then if you have the KI, if you have the internet and you have a lot of knowledge base theoretically, you need to decide what is important. You need to sort of group the information that you have, and that is common sense and clinical skills.
Yeah, I always think one thing about AI is that it can't make eye contact and
Excellent.
it can't establish a doctor patient relationship. It can do a lot of other things, but the eye contact with the family is so important in terms of generating trust, etc. So you built a team in Leipzig. How did you do that?
Well, again, there are two aspects of it. First of all, I love to be with people. So it was always fun to interview people, to see how they thought and, to experience their different lifestyle, their different way of looking at things. On the other hand, we also had the opportunity to have good medical students whom we sort of followed and then recruited. I mean, I don't want to put down names, but there are a number of people whom we trained as medical student, then as young doctors who became later professors at our
Yes,
institution.
yes, yeah,
Or I'm thinking about our pediatric intensivist and also about the pediatric cardiologists in our institution. They are with us from the very beginning. On the other hand, again, most of them went abroad, went to other places, and then came back. So you have the combination of people that really want to form a team and have their home in our institution. I used to make a bad joke, a really bad joke, because some of my colleagues do live in our hospital, literally.
yeah,
They spend a lot of time in the hospital. On the other hand, you don't need to work 24 hours a day. You shouldn't actually, but you have to commit yourself. And I was lucky enough of having enough people and many people who do feel the same. And it's sort of also, forming a group around you that sort of fits. And I think the only thing that I really liked when I retired a year ago, that all of my staff, we had a big celebration, big party, and they said, whatever went wrong, one thing that we will never forget is that you formed a wonderful team and we like each other. They don't love each other. Don't get it
yeah.
wrong.
No, but
But they
they're
like
prepared to
to,
support each other. Yeah, that's very
exactly,
important.
they like
So
to work together.
you surrounded yourself with clearly ambitious and
Mm,
committed and intelligent people.
mm.
Was there a possibility to build into the environment some degree of self-criticism of yourself? Tell us a little bit if you think that's important.
I think that's the crucial point that I had omitted to mention before. Self-criticism, and it's not self, it's also criticism. For me, the major criticizing person in my life is my wife for 40 years now. My family, our children, we are very open. We criticize each other. But I also had some colleagues in the hospital who really dared to say, oh, Wieland, come on, this is not what you should do. Or are you really meaning that this is going the right way? In addition, 20 years ago, I had decided, because my wife actually said, you need coaching. When I was dean of our medical school, I thought myself of being invincible.
Yeah, yeah,
Basically, I couldn't do anything. And she said, stop, you have to think about yourself. So
yeah,
instead of asking for a professional coach, I actually formed a group of friends. We are 6 people. None of them is a physician. I'm the only physician. But everyone has a professional life with lots of people working with them. They have their families. So the question, do you have enough time with your family and spouse? Do you have enough strength for your professional career? Was the same for all of us. So we met once a year for 2 days and discussed everything in life. We also, of course, could meet in between and discuss things or help each other. And I think you need professional, semi-professional help and coaching. And importantly, a stable family for me was really the mainstay and the major thing that
yeah, yeah,
helped me keep
yeah,
going.
yeah. I'm glad you mentioned that. I think that that really is crucial.
Mm,
And I also had coaching because, and I think in terms of leadership, I mean, there are things we do as academics. You need to be able to speak in public effectively
mm,
in the context of a discussion and also in the context of giving a lecture.
mm,
Giving a formal lecture is probably easier than
mm,
actually standing up at a meeting and making a meaningful contribution. And I certainly, when I was around 40, sort of suddenly found myself in a situation where I was terrified to stand up at a meeting and ask a question. So I went to a professional public speaking coach, and actually within one day,
mm,
he gave me the techniques which gave me the confidence
mhm.
to speak in public. And I think anybody interested in really reaching the heights that we all aspire to should consider having coaching in some sort of way. I think that's very important.
Martin, in Germany, I'm very happy to say this is now mandatory. So if you want to follow
Interesting.
a career, uh, becoming the head of a hospital, etc., or of a group, you need to show certain certificates, formal training in,
Right.
for example, communication skills, etc., which I think is important. When I
Yeah.
was young, that didn't exist at all.
Right. Right. That's very interesting.
Mm.
So I think it's been very interesting to hear. So looking back, can you just identify a number of key qualities of leadership that you think are important in terms of giving advice to younger pediatricians?
First of all, you need a high degree of curiosity towards your research topic, towards clinical work. Medicine is always a point of research. You need to be interested in people, so curiosity in how people function, how they interact, which then will give you insight in how to participate in that interaction. You also, again, like I mentioned, you have to like people. So if you are rather alone on yourself, it's probably not a good idea to form teams. So you need to like people. In addition, you have to, that was something I really had a lot of problems with initially. You need to understand that not everybody will be your friend. Not everybody will love you. My mother used to say, "Oh, Wieland wants to be loved by everyone." Well, yes, that's true, but that will not happen. So you also need a strategy to understand how to interact with people who would probably not like to interact with you as much as it should be. So curiosity, patience, and love of people are sort of the issues that I would put forward.
I mean, I think relationships are very important,
Mm,
and I think I think friendship is important within the specialty,
mhm.
because friendship leads to collaboration, which is fun and probably essential now in any field of research if we're really going to reach the heights and publish high impact factor publications. There has to be collaboration. Would you agree?
Absolutely. And I really do mean what I'm going to say now. It's not my career. I mean, people, like I mentioned initially, the professor in Munich who simply put me on the tracks to apply for the stipend. He was instrumental for my career. My former boss in the United States, he was a very patient, very calm, highly intelligent person. Unfortunately, he died 2 years ago. You have to stand this, Martin. You yourself trained me when you were SBIT a secretary. I mean, you can learn from so many people, and I had the privilege to get to know people who really were good teachers and who were people that you could look up at.
But I think you say get to know. It's actually to seek. You seek these people
Of
out.
course, of
You
course.
recognize quality, and you go for quality. And
Mhm,
I think that's another key feature.
mhm.
So it's really been wonderful having the opportunity to hear about your career, to hear your insight into leadership, which I think is extraordinarily important. And you've given us some very fundamental messages. So thank you so much, Wieland, for being with us today. I'm sure this interview will be viewed around the world. And above all, I'd like to congratulate you on all your achievements, but also the way you've managed to keep such a healthy work life family balance. I think that's absolutely crucial. So well done, and thank you again.
Thank you very much, Martin, and everybody. It was a joy and, of course, a privilege. Thank you very much.
Welcome. So this is where we end our session. I hope very much that you found it to be valuable, and we look forward to joining you again in other educational events. And so I take this opportunity to thank you for logging in and being with us. And from London, I say goodbye and have a good day. Goodbye.